This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy, and we have exclusive audio of the secret society at FBI. This was from the day that Jeff Sessions came down and fired Jim Comey. Listen to the reactions from the senior level agents.
Captain, my captain.
Sit down, Mr. Anderson. You hear me? Sit down.
Mr. Strzok.
Sit down.
Miss Page.
This is your final warning, Anderson. How dare you? You hear me?
Oh, Captain, my captain.
A lot of people are under the misimpression that Walt Whitman wrote that poem about Lincoln. He wrote that poem about Jim Comey.
Oh, right.
He was prescient, was Whitman. He was a forward thinker. And our fearful trip is done. The ship has weathered every wreck. The prize we sought is won. That sounds like something Jim Comey would actually tweet.
Yes, it does.
Insufferable.
They're so philosophical.
The 50,000 missing text messages, the everything that we know about what Comey did, because he did it so publicly, and in such a insouciant, self-regarding manner, it's difficult to forget. And now we're starting to learn about all of the people around him. And interestingly, Christopher Wray, the current FBI director, running interference for some of those Comey holdovers, including those that arguably were compromised based on a little bit of 2020 vision after the fact in terms of looking at the Russian collusion investigation, looking at the Hillary Clinton investigation. And the question is, can the Mueller special investigation, Special Prosecutor Mueller, can the FBI go forward and do anything do anything in terms of prosecutions in this case that beyond unrelated prosecutions like lying to the FBI or violations of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act would be viewed as legitimate in the public's mind, given what we know about Strzok and Page and McCabe and Comey? For an answer to that question and others, we're pleased to be joined by our friend Noah Rothman, associate editor for Commentary Magazine. Noah, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So, Gowdy and Radcliffe, two former prosecutors, were all over the cable news shows yesterday talking about these emails, what's known and what's unknown. And I mean, truly, what standing does the FBI have, and by extension Mueller have, to continue this investigation? Do we not have kind of a fruit of the poisonous tree problem on the investigative side?
Oh, I don't think you can make that claim at all. The notion that the entire Bureau of Investigations is tainted by the existence of, I guess, some of these texts and the extent to which former acting director McCabe behaved in a way that I think was inappropriate, it would be ridiculous.
Well, wait a second.
You can't impugn this Bureau because of the behavior of these couple of agents.
Well, I'm not talking, but text messages that are just an exhibit in the evidentiary case against Peter Strzok, who made the decision to change grossly negligent to extremely careless with respect to Hillary Clinton, which perhaps prompted Jim Comey to create that intense standard for mishandling classified information. There starts to be material links, doesn't there?
No, I don't think so. Frankly, I think you have the timeline wrong, if you don't mind me saying.
Go ahead.
Mr. Strzok didn't change the wording in order to force the Bureau not to indict Hillary Clinton. The Bureau was not going to indict Hillary Clinton. Therefore, to use a phrase like a gross negligence, which is a prosecutable term, would have been ridiculous. You can't accompany something that would normally accompany an indictment with language that accompanies an indictment, whether or not you think the Bureau's decision not to prosecute Hillary Clinton was correct. And I do not. It would have been inappropriate to use language like that.
But that's my point. Kind of whichever direction you want to take it, they're bootstrapping an argument to substantiate a conclusion that was erroneous and not supported by the black letter statute.
Secondarily, these texts some of them are very concerning. This, secret society thing. And then there was some reference to a fallback plan, but we don't know the extent to which that was bluster or not. And if you're going to take the text as evidence, you have to take the exculpatory ones too, like his text on May 19th, 2017, right before he was about to join the investigation, where he said to Lisa Page, "You and I both know the odds are nothing. If I thought it was likely, I'd be there, no question. I hesitate in part because my gut sense and concern is there's no big deal here." Now, he was removed from this investigation in late July, so the conspiracy he's talking about here would have had to have been conceived and executed in the space of 2 months. That's one heck of a conspiracy.
Well,
I think if this guy had any malign influence on this probe, it was certainly limited by virtue of the fact that he was only on it for 6 weeks.
yeah, but he had access. I mean, he interviewed Hillary Clinton. He interviewed Uma Abedin, Cheryl Mills. I mean, he had a seat at the table where he was the lead investigator. And Senator Ron Johnson said yesterday that an informant told lawmakers about this secret society where the FBI held these clandestine meetings. I mean, that there has got to be a level of. Don't you think his political bias affects the way he does his job?
I think that and Andrew McCabe should have recused himself from Hillary Clinton's investigation. And the fact that he recused himself from activity in Virginia and not nationally is ridiculous, absurd, and he should be encouraged to resign as soon as his pension is up. But I think the problem here is that we're confusing the Hillary Clinton investigation with the Donald Trump investigation.
Okay.
These are two very distinct things. And the extent to which Republicans and conservatives are still smarting over what they think, and I agree, was improper and political conduct at the FBI in favor of Hillary Clinton in order to not upend the 2016 election and imposing that on the investigation of Donald Trump. Those are two separate things, and I'm not going to confuse them.
Well, I mean, I'm not still smarting over it, but it seems it's a pattern of conduct with some of the same players. That's the issue, and that's the issue that Trey Gowdy raised yesterday.
Yeah, and I don't think Mr. Gowdy or Mr. Goodlatte, who alleged literally a conspiracy in the FBI, have any standing to demonstrate this. They are making an assertion and hoping you trust them. The evidence doesn't support that. Now, maybe they will propose, support, and defend evidence later that does support these claims, but they don't right now. And to make those assertions and undermine faith in American institutions like law enforcement, which is, by the way, something that Donald Trump ran on in 2016, that we would begin to, again, respect law enforcement, is something that I find rather vile, especially because it is done by insinuation.
Well, I'm not
supporting evidence.
Yeah, I think right. Launching conspiracy theories that are not supported by the evidence is one thing. That's problematic. Questioning the legitimacy of investigations or perhaps the corruptive influence of bias in some of these investigations by people who had material impact on the investigation seems to me quite another. And we go not just at FBI, but also over at DOJ and Bruce Orr's existence over there as well. I mean, it does seem to me that one can make a case that they were out to protect Hillary Clinton, and at least some individuals were out to get Donald Trump. Whether or not they actually concocted a material conspiracy in furtherance of that, the disposition is the starting point of the conversation, it seems to me.
I mean, I guess I can't argue with that. It's hard to argue with that because it's sort of an unobjectionable thing. Yes, I mean, there's certain appearances here that are disturbing and deserve to be investigated. But I'm also not going to play coy with what I believe is the intent of this process, because the evidence is so thin to support it. The notion here that there's some sort of conspiracy abroad and that its design is to create some suspicion in the Mueller probe ahead and advance of its activity involving Donald Trump's closer associates, which we think is about to ramp up. There's a political narrative being established here.
Well,
okay. It's pretty obvious to me. Well, and it's one I don't think we should ignore.
Well, Jim Jordan referred to the explanations thus far of the 50,000 missing text messages, kind of the dog ate my homework quality. What about those text messages that are missing?
Yeah, I have no idea. I don't know anything about them, and that's sort of weird. We don't know whether or not the Bureau had any obligation to maintain keep this as evidence. So we can't necessarily say that there was a breakdown there that was in violation of a statute or a provision, but it might have been.
Right,
we just don't know.
Yeah.
It's not as though it's sort of different from the Hillary Clinton thing, where those messages were deleted in violation of a standing law in order to maintain and protect that sort of evidence for
But come on, it's the
record-keeping law.
FBI. I mean,
Well,
if anybody can find those missing messages, it should be the FBI.
Well, but also, I mean, just to be fair, going both ways, not assuming things we don't know, the FBI has not made that contention. Nobody at the FBI has suggested we had no duty to keep those text messages. So,
That's true.
Right. So just in terms of what they're not giving that pushback. So I think that's noteworthy as well. With respect to Mueller now moving to want to question Trump about Flynn's departure, Comey's departure, what's the president's play here? It certainly seems like, politically speaking, the political narrative piece of this, he has a cover story to not participate.
Oh, to not participate in the probe? Well, I mean, I certainly think it would probably be best for him not to participate in the probe. Unless you're going to have a criminal lawyer with you, and optically it's very bad to have a criminal lawyer with you. So that's why Jeff Sessions didn't have a criminal lawyer with him when he spoke with the probe. But if you're going to talk with the FBI and law enforcement when you're under investigation, you need to have a criminal attorney with you,
well, can he
or else you could perjure yourself.
Can he just answer, the written questions? I mean, can he answer?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've read that the probe wants to submit some written questions and do some orally and sort of have that interaction. Maybe I don't know what Ty Cobb's strategy is. He's spoken on this with Major Garrett recently. I don't know what the strategy is. So they seem inclined to engage with the probe. But, yeah, it's a prospect. You never know what's going to happen when the rubber hits the road there. So, yeah, I think you're probably right that it would be better for him not to engage in this probe, but it's probably politically untenable.
You put yourself in such a vulnerable position. Well,
unless he gets the Hillary Clinton deal of not having to answer questions under oath. Before we let you go, the immigration piece, Chuck Schumer taking border wall funding off the table because, we're essentially kind of restarting the negotiation, as it were. Or what's your sense that we're going to go right up at Parkinson's Law? We're going to go right up to that February 8th deadline for any potential deal on DACA plus border security plus immigration reform? Or do you think, based on what's happened to this point, that any sort of deal that leaves both sides somewhat happy and somewhat disappointed is unlikely?
Yeah, the latter, unfortunately. We were a lot closer to a deal before the shutdown than we were after it. Now Chuck Schumer's backing off his position. I mean, everybody's agreed on DACA. The sticking point is border security. And what the White House is asking for is pennies. And what they want is a political victory. They want to be able to say we got the wall, even though they're not even really asking for it in writing anymore. And Democrats want a political victory. They want to say we killed the wall, even though it's not really an issue anymore. It's all very theatrical. And it's very frustrating because we're pretty close to something that's an actionable deal, DACA, for a very small amount of money that would be a very big effect on the border. And now everybody's backing away from it. So, yes, we're going to get right up to that line, and we'll probably cross over it because Congress never does anything without a lot of pressure and missed deadlines.
Noah Rothman, Associate Editor for Commentary Magazine. Noah, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.